All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Amanda Prez, and I'm with the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training here at the University of Oregon. Today's webinar is Systems, Resources, and Benefits on Serving Persons with Brain Injury. Just to orient you a little bit to this webinar, we are going to be using the Q&A, which will be at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to use it as we go through. That will be where we're gathering your questions and keeping track of them so that we can answer them towards the end of today's webinar. We will also be going through a couple of polls. You'll see those popping up on your screen as we go through also, and then we will also be using the chat function. So we'll try to make this as interactive as possible. We do want to hear from you. And so please use those resources as we have them. You should have hopefully received your handouts this morning. I sent those out a couple of hours ago. Hopefully they're top of your email. If you did not get them, I will put my email in chat and you're welcome to email me directly. It will be pereza@siebert.org. So do check the chat for that here in just a couple of minutes. Like I said, we will have an opportunity for questions at the end. And with all of that said, Lori, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Great. Thanks, Amanda, and to all of you for joining us for this third and final webinar in our three-part Eastern Oregon Brain Injury Resources Winter Webinar Series. My name is Lori Powell, and I'm also with the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training at the University of Oregon. And we'd like to acknowledge the funding source for this webinar series, Oregon's Administration for Community Living Traumatic Brain Injury Partnership Grant. So joining me today are Jennifer Bonnell, Independent Living Specialist, Community Partner, Work Incentive Coordinator with the Eastern Oregon Centers for Independent Living, David Crackey, Oregon Brain Injury Advocate Coordinator, and also Megan Jones, the coordinator for this webinar series, working with us at Siebert. In terms of a session outline, I'll kick it off with some highlights from our first two webinars. The first one was on November 4th, the second on December 2nd, 2020. And then we're going to dive in and learn a little bit more about accommodating and supporting persons living with brain injury. This was per request of participants from our previous webinars. Then I'll turn it over to Jennifer to talk about her work in supporting people with brain injury accessing benefits with a particular focus on work related benefits. And then Dave will give us an update on legislative advocacy, on brain injury resource facilitation, and we will also talk about the Eastern Oregon Brain Injury Provider Network. Okay, so in terms of our previous webinars, we covered a pretty wide range of topics. I gave a very brief introduction to the topic of brain injury and also screening for brain injury. And then we were delighted to have members of our Eastern Oregon Brain Injury Provider Network share their experiences serving people with disabilities and with brain injury in particular. Kurt Toombs, Executive Director of the Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living, the EOCIL. Derek Earle, family physician out of Hermiston, who serves both youth and adults who have experienced concussions and brain injuries. Jana Mitchell, community health worker with Lifeways at Umatilla County, who provides a range of supports for people with brain injuries and accessing services. And then Dave Crackey introduced us to the work that's being done at the state level to improve access to services statewide for people living with brain injury. So what we're going to do right now is just step back for a moment and revisit why we put together this webinar series. And originally it was intended to be a series of in-person town halls in Eastern Oregon. And of course, because of COVID, we weren't able to do that. So we put together this webinar series. But regardless of the format, the intention was the same, is to reach out to providers who may or may not know they may be serving individuals with brain injury, and that this is an effort to just raise awareness, provide some education, resources, and connection. So what I'd like to do now is revisit the topic of screening just a little bit and make that a segue into accommodations, because that's the focus for today. What you're looking at here is part of a three-part brochure that was developed as part of our network activities. This one is customized for Umatilla, but the idea is to provide people who may be going to a doctor's office, in this case, a warming shelter for people who are unhoused, to get some information about brain injury, to ask themselves some questions about maybe there is a lifetime history of brain injury that hasn't been explored, or it happened years ago, and yet in one's adult life, it might answer why some things are just really difficult. So what I'd like to do is present this in a form of a hypothetical case study, if you will. So let's say I'm a housing counselor working with seniors and people living with disabilities. And I'm working with this one particular client, a senior in their 70s, who is struggling to maintain stable housing. And this individual has a recent history of forgetting to budget in order to pay for their rent, and also has difficulty remembering our appointments. And when we are in conversation with one another, it's very challenging to focus and to take in the information to try to support this person. There could be several reasons why this individual is struggling, but one of the things I want to have back of mind is maybe there is a possibility of a history of brain injury. I don't know, I'm not a medical provider, but I might want to ask about that. So let's say in a visit together, I might ask some of these questions, these 5 key questions that come out of the Ohio State University OSU TBI ID method, a screening tool that we reviewed in the December webinar in this series. It's widely available, free. Providers of all backgrounds could administer this with some training, which is also freely available off various websites. This brochure was derived from that screener. And as a provider, I might want to ask some of these questions. So in going through this with this client, lo and behold, when I asked question number 4, in your lifetime, have you ever injured your head or neck in a fall? And this client answered yes. In fact, about a year previous to our work together, this individual fell, tripped over a rug, area rug, and hit their head against a wall. They weren't sure if they lost consciousness or not, but didn't seek any medical help. But notice that things had changed after that event. And so we're looking at the symptoms associated with brain injury, that far right panel. These are by no means exhaustive, the kinds of things that can happen after brain injury. But this person did endorse that, yeah, it is difficult for me to focus. It is difficult for me to get up and go to initiate and complete activities. And so this opens up a conversation. And with that, a suggestion to maybe consider seeking out more medical information, going to their doctor and having a conversation about a concussion with symptoms that haven't resolved as a possible explanation for why it's been hard to track information, participate in appointments, and so forth. So as a housing counselor, I can maybe offer that as a referral, this sort of middle square here in this possible pathways diagram. But in the meantime, what I want to do is just help this person right here, right now. What can I do to support them in our work together to try to find stable housing? So last webinar, I presented this slide to sort of introduce the topic of accommodations. These are some very simple, very basic accommodations. Not everyone will need every single one of these, but they give you an idea of how simple it can be and how impactful it can be. Just simple adjustments can make a huge difference in someone's ability to engage in activities, whatever it is you're doing. So distraction-free environments, using short but complete messages, providing extra time for a person to process the information you've been discussing, and so forth. So let's dig in a little deeper to accommodations and some resources that are literally at your fingertips at the end of this PowerPoint slide that Megan has provided for you. The first is the Accommodating Symptoms of Brain Injury from the Ohio Valley Center for Brain Injury Prevention and Rehab. This is the same group that put together the Ohio State University TBID method, the screener that I mentioned earlier. So what you have here is a really nice package from screener to a nice compendium of ideas for how to support somebody who may be struggling with symptoms of brain injury. We've decided to feature here the part of this booklet that is dealing with the problem of initiation, because that in this hypothetical case study, this person I'm working with is having trouble with that. So on the left, you see problems, for example, what to look for, has trouble getting started with a task, appears to be passive or unmotivated, and that's not really the case for my client, but does have difficulty trying to achieve a goal, in this case, trying to put all the paperwork together for applying for some rental assistance, but it's difficult to complete the paperwork. So I go from problem to accommodating ideas. What can I do? For one thing, maybe consider just simplifying what it is we're trying to accomplish during our meetings. Maybe what we're trying to do is try to do too much at once. So breaking the larger project of applying for rental assistance down into small, more manageable chunks. That idea of simplification can look very different across individuals, across goals and so forth. And of course, I would want to do this in partnership with this individual. Is it okay if we break this down? Is it okay if maybe we have shorter meetings to help with focus and to achieve a little bit more each time we meet? The column on the right reviews for you all the different other sections of this booklet that dealing with other aspects of cognition, attention, processing, memory, initiation, and so forth. So it's very focused on accommodating cognitive symptoms of brain injury. So that's one excellent source. And now what I'm going to introduce you to is another resource. It's a slightly different format. It comes from the Rehabilitation Hospital of Indiana. We provided these links to you in previous webinars, but I wanted to bring it back again and contrast it a little bit with the Ohio Valley system, because what you see here is a focus not only on cognitive issues, attention, concentration, and so forth, you see on the left and the right columns, but also they expanded this resource to include issues around sensory, physical challenges, fatigue. We focused on headaches here in the middle, and you can see how these fact sheets are sent up. What does it mean to have headaches after brain injury? How common is it? Why? What are common types? And what are some strategies that you might consider? All, of course, within the context of working with your medical provider on these issues as appropriate. So what's nice about these is they're oriented to the person with brain injury, whereas the Ohio Valley booklet is oriented to the providers. And both are interchangeable, but just wanted to contrast those for you. Okay, so the third resource I wanted to share with you is one grown right here in Oregon, out of the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training, called Staff TBI Skill Builder. And this was funded by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehab Research. This is a free online introductory training for frontline staff serving adults with brain injury. And what I'd like to do now is just give you a little bit of a taste of what Skill Builder is about. It's comprised of 14 modules. Each module takes about 5 to 10 minutes. Again, it's online, interactive, self-directed, free. We have the link to get to our website where you can register for this if you may not already be familiar with it. Modules 1 through 6 cover basic skills, including important facts about brain injury, the important skill of getting to know a person, because so much good person-centered care is created by simply spending time getting to know the person and then learning from there how to communicate and support that individual. And module 5, supporting the use of memory tools, we're going to come back to here in a bit with some examples. Module 7 through 14 take those basic skills and put them into more advanced skills. So for several of you on the call, maybe you are a healthcare provider, or Jennifer providing access to benefits, and where you'd want to integrate some of those basic skills into your service, working with individuals. And then we also have a module, for example, on self-care for staff, because this is very important that is recognized in this process of supporting people. And also helping with challenging behaviors and co-occurring conditions with brain injury. We have a whole series of webinars that we put together this past year on that topic. Each section has important information, personal story videos, skill videos, wanting to learn more, quizzes, and a skills journal. And those are to help facilitate interaction with the material, to help remember, retain it, and apply it to your unique situation. This is what the landing page looks like. This is a chunk out of our first module. You can see it's very tight, just short chunks of information. So it's not overwhelming. Here's some sample skills checklists. So for example, supporting communication, adjusting topic, adjusting timing, adjusting attention. These are almost like pre-conversational skills. It's sort of thinking, is this a good time to bring up a topic? This particular topic, maybe not. If this person's having a bad day, maybe, we wait till later. We adjust the timing of when we bring up a difficult topic. Supporting communication also involves adjusting, again, the length of what you say, how you say it, your nonverbal expressions, and so forth. And then here's some other skills that are taught in the program. So let's take a quick look at supporting the use of memory tools by way of starting with a video clip from a family member who is talking about this and the importance of both creating, adjusting, and practicing the tools.
Because of his challenges with memory and project management, he really needs to have like a short punctuated list of his activities for the day or his to-do list, like we all do, but he really needs it more to function. So we've tried various things. Currently, we use kind of a dry erase board list and some version on an electronic, like his phone, on an app on his phone.
All right. So very brief little clip insight into the lived experience of working with memory tools from the spouse's perspective. We have several other videos like this in the program. Now let's turn to a skills video focused on memory tools, starting with a negative example. These the skills videos were put together with professional actors and scripted to really illustrate very clearly the differences between what to do, what not to do. So let's take a first look at it with this negative example.
I think you have a doctor's appointment later this week.
Oh, really? I don't remember.
Yeah, I have Friday at 10 a.m. leave by 9:30. Do you want to meet with me Thursday to get ready?
Sure, I guess.
Okay, I have 1 or 3 p.m. What works for you?
3, I guess.
Great. I'll see you Thursday.
Yep.
Okay, let's contrast that example with the next one.
So I think you have a doctor's appointment later this week.
Oh, really? I don't remember.
I wonder if it's in your calendar.
Oh, wait, yeah. Friday doctor's appointment at 10 a.m., leave by 9:30 a.m.
That's what I have here. Do you want to meet Thursday to get ready?
I guess.
Okay. I have 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. What works best for you?
3.
Great. You might want to put that in your calendar.
Yeah,
with
an alert. Anything for you. Okay. So Thursday, doc prep. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Heather.
Heather.
Sounds good. So how will you remember what's going on later this week?
My notes. Thursday, 3 o'clock with you, Heather, and then Friday, doc appointment at 10 a.m., leave by 9:30 a.m.
Perfect. I'll see you Thursday at 3.
Great.
Okay, so pretty clear contrast between those two examples. All of the skills videos that have contrasts like that are pretty clear and obvious by design, because our work in this area has shown that that's what is necessary to help it really kind of stick. And one thing I want to point out is how the second session took longer, because the provider and the client were working together to get him to integrate the use of his memory tool, in this case, his calendar app on his smartphone. You might have noticed she used a day planner. It could be that it's completely reversed for certain clients. Maybe they're using a day planner, the staff is using a smartphone. There's no right or wrong answers to which memory tools to use, but really the core idea is to consider that they are important. We all use them. Everybody does, and that the need to personalize, practice, and adapt are the key ideas. And that was what the spouse earlier described in her presentation. So what I want to do now before handing it over to Jennifer is to sort of take this topic of accommodations, and I've been referring to it very broadly here in this webinar, interchangeably with strategies and skills, and think about this slide that Dr. Earle presented in December, and how with the patient, the client at the center of this model of care, that the mental health team, if medical team, support community teams, whichever is relevant to a person's need, that the use of accommodations can be universally understood and practiced. I think that is definitely a goal, with the person at the center of determining what those accommodations should be, negotiating that with providers. And what I'd like to do at this point is leave you with a quote that sort of gets at that. This is from a participant in our Skill Builder project, and it drives it home for me, the importance of accommodations. People are nice, but it feels like most people don't get it. I was classified as mild, but have had significant issues over a year, which I never anticipated or expected. The one person who I felt like got it was an Oregon vocational rehab counselor. The counselor turned off the bright lights and highlighted important things in yellow. I have vision issues with my TBI. Even if I didn't ask for lights off, highlighting, repeating instruction, it was helpful when staff did that. It took me almost a year to acknowledge something was really wrong and that I could ask for people to do things differently to accommodate me. That said, it's taxing to have to add that to the mix, trying to think of what I need on top of trying to keep up with what's going on. I cried when somebody intuitively got it and just gave me things that helped. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer Bonnell to talk about her work with the EOSL. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. So I'm Jennifer Bonnell. I work at Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living. I am in our Ontario office. My official title is an independent living specialist, and I am a community partner work incentive coordinator. So I'm part of what's called the my services are contracted by EOCIL as part of the Work Incentive Network, or WIN. And what I do is I provide information to people with disabilities that are receiving benefits and are thinking about going back to work. And they want to know what's going to happen to their benefits. It could be their Social Security benefits, their veterans benefits, their food stamps, their housing, or it could be a combination of all of their different benefits. So, you know, people that are receiving disability, and, you know, they often think about going back to work, but the fear, I hear that so often when I get a call from people, oh, I'm scared something's going to happen. I have to have my benefits. I have to have my medical. I can't lose my benefits. So they get referred to me or they call me and we sit down and we do an intake. I gather information about their benefits, what benefits they're receiving, how much they're receiving, a little bit about their family, you know, if their family's receiving any benefits. So we don't want to mess up those benefits either. So one of the things that I do during that intake is ask the participant is, you know, are there any accommodations, so that I can kind of know that at the beginning as I'm presenting information. The information I present is, I don't want to say is really hard, but it's very technical. I mean, when you're dealing with Social Security, you know, they don't say things in normal human speak. They speak Social Security. So sometimes it's just a little more difficult to understand. So let's see, what else? So what I do is the participant comes to me, and they usually are referred, but they can come directly. They can call me directly. They usually are referred by the vocational rehabilitation, developmental disability programs, mental health programs, just a variety of different places. So I deal with people with all disabilities. So some of the things I do once they provide the information, we look at their Social Security benefits. We talk about what's going to happen if they work, how much they can work, and then kind of what the process is, how to report those benefits to Social Security, and get that information, how to report it to other agencies. So that's the next step, giving them some general basic information about the benefits they're receiving. After that, then I ask the participant if they would like, if they have what they need at that point to make decisions about working and benefits, or I give them the choice of verifying their benefits and then providing a written report. So that can become the next step. Once that written report is finished, then the client can move forward with their goals. They can contact me at any time to ask questions. If there's an issue that comes up because of the work around their benefits, then they can contact me. Let's see, what else do we do? So that's kind of the process. Some of my consumers I work with, I have been doing this for 13 years. Some of my consumers have been with me since the beginning. So, you know, if they have an issue or they get that scary letter from Social Security, then I get a phone call from them saying, hey, I don't understand this. What's going on? So I help with that. So that's kind of how the job description happens, what I do on a daily basis. I do, you know, during that conversation, there's often other questions that come up, other benefits. For example, one of the questions, I have a consumer I'm working with in the area that he's having some problems with his employer. You know, that's totally out of my area of expertise. I'm not sure what resources he have available. So I would refer him to one of the independent living specialists within our program or within the state that are more familiar with those resources. So what I can help them with, then I help them one else to find those resources. Example of a gentleman that I'm working with. He is a gentleman living with a brain injury. He said to me, you know, I have had some improvement and I'm ready to move forward. This gentleman receives SSI, and someone that receives SSI, the most that they receive from Social Security in a month in 2021 is $794 a month. So oftentimes participants are looking to supplement that income because we all know $795 is not much to live on each month. But when you receive SSI, when you have income, it begins reducing your SSI. So work also reduces your income, although there are work incentives that it's more friendly that if it's earned income than if it's unearned income on how it reduces your SSI benefit. So this gentleman is receiving SSI. He is working part-time, so it is reducing his SSI. But even with the reduction in his SSI, with his paycheck and his SSI, he does have more to live on than he just would have with just receiving his SSI. But he wants to start his own business. He wants to work himself off of benefits. That's his goal. He wants to not get his Social Security benefits anymore. He wants to be self-supporting. So he wants to start a small business. He wants to continue working his part-time job. I think it's 4 days a week. And those other 3 days a week, he would like to provide this service in the community that he wants to offer. He's done his research, and he knows that this is a service that is needed in his community, and he feels that he can supplement his income enough for his Social Security benefits to stop. So he is going to utilize what's called a PASS plan, which stands for Plan to Achieve Self-Support, which is a Social Security work incentive. Basically what a PASS plan does, the person submits an application to Social Security, and normally when you have earned income, it reduces the SSI, like I said previously. But if you can take so if you have a goal, you can take the money that you normally is reducing your SSI, and you can put that in an account to pay for that vocational goal. Maybe it's to go to school, maybe it's to buy the equipment in this person's case, to buy the equipment that he needs to start his own business. So so that's when you have a PASS plan in place, that money is no longer reducing your SSI. So you have your full SSI check to live on while you're setting aside those earnings to pay for a goal. And not giving you a very good example, but somebody wants more details, we can get into that. So he's going to set aside, so he has submitted his PASS plan to Social Security to see if he will be accepted. If his PASS plan is accepted, then he will be able to start his small business providing a service using the PASS plan funds to purchase the equipment that he needs to have his business. So that's just really a good example of someone going out there and having a goal and figuring out a way to make that goal happen by using Social Security's rules to get, to be financially more stable. One of the other things that Lori asked me to give you some examples and some ideas about is some of the strategies I use. Of course, one of the strategies and I will often suggest that it would help that they can refer back to the written report as needed. So I often suggest it. So that's one strategy that I do. I do provide fact sheets. If they don't want the written report, I provide fact sheets that they can refer back to. Of course, I provide them all my contact information that they can always contact me in the future with questions or concerns. I do a lot of my, especially now, but even before COVID, I do a lot of phone services with my consumers because I serve pretty much all of Eastern Oregon. And if I spend time on the road, then I just don't have, it limits the time I have with consumers. So I do a lot of phone services, but I do make the accommodation if needed to do one-on-one services. Of course, right now that's a little bit harder with COVID, but hopefully that will end soon and we can get back to normal where I can do more one-on-one if that consumer needs that accommodation. And then, of course, I am available to review the information with the consumer as many times as they need that review. They can contact me anytime. They can catch up with me. They can send me an email. They can call me, whatever is the best method for them. What else? I also refer them to other resources as necessary. Again, like I said, I would get them to an independent living specialist in my program or another center for independent living throughout the state. Or if I know the resource myself, I would help them connect with that resource. I do also pay attention to the cues of the person that I'm working with to notice if they're being overwhelmed by the information that I'm providing. And, suggest maybe that we need to take a break or, I'll check in with them to see if they're understanding. I'll also say, do you want to call it enough for today? And, we reschedule for another time. So those are some of the strategies that I use with the consumers that I work with. I think that pretty much covers what I do. So I will quit talking and give someone else a chance.
Well, Jennifer, I think I'm back on now. That was excellent. You compressed a lot of information into a short period of time. And I think you had me at, being able to distill the information from Social Security and interpret that for somebody. That's an accommodation in itself. And then all the wonderful strategies you just listed, reviewing the information, being able to be, contacted at any time. That's exactly, and this is good for so many people across disability categories, right? It's just not,
Right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that nice overview and for the example that you provided. And please, those of you on the call today, feel free to put some questions in the chat for Jennifer that we can get to later during the Q&A section. But I think what we'll do now is move on to a little bit of an overview of the Eastern Oregon Brain Injury Provider Network. So thank you, Jennifer. And I'm going to move it on to the next slide. Of course, I was moving on before. Whoops, went backwards here. Let me try it again. Okay, excellent. I think Megan will be joining us for this overview of what this network is all about.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So for the last 2.5 years, we have been meeting monthly with a group of providers in Eastern Oregon. And the purpose of this network is to support them and to provide a sense of connection and growing in a referral network. And so we want to open up this network to more people in the Eastern Oregon area. So if you're interested in joining this network, if you could, we're going to bring up a poll and you can indicate whether you'd be interested in learning more information. Signing up for this is not, does not require you to participate, but just if you're interested in learning more, please indicate on this poll if you're interested. The network meets the first Wednesday of every month from 12 to 1 p.m. Pacific time. And in that meeting, we can discuss a variety of things. It can be about learning about other people in your area, or maybe specific questions you may have about serving a client with brain injury. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email me. It's on the slide for you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Megan. And thanks to all of you for participating in the poll. And also, I realized we missed the first poll. I just blew right past it. We didn't get to know about you. And Amanda, I don't know if it's too late to do that. We maybe should go ahead and move on. But usually what we do is a poll to kind of at the beginning to find out more about all of you. But I think for right now, if it's okay, we'll go ahead and move on so we can have plenty of time for Q&A. At this point, I'd like to now introduce to you David Kratky, Oregon's Brain Injury Advocate Coordinator. So just to take it while he gets on the call here, we've gone from, accommodations as a broad overview topic to Jennifer's review of her work as a benefits coordinator. And now we're going to telescope back and take a look at the broader landscape of what's going on in Oregon by way of increasing capacity to access services and support. So I'll let Dave take it from here.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Jennifer. A wonderful presentation, and quite frankly, extremely illustrative of why we need these legislative efforts. I come from the philosophy that in order to get substantial and meaningful change within Oregon, we really need to address, or at least look at as a potential option, legislation. There is some, in certain circles, there's some hesitation to go that route, but I think that we have seen legislation work as a very viable means or mechanism to ensure that various requirements occur with brain injured individuals, such as Max's Law, the nation's first enacted youth concussion law, our follow-up law, Jenna's Law, named after Jenna Sneva, a young woman who lives in Sisters, Oregon. And now with these efforts that we have listed on this slide. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes here. I've spoken about these before in at least one of our prior meetings. The first that I will discuss on the left side of this slide, brain injury resource facilitation, or broken down as BI, brain injury RF, resource facilitation. That is merely another way of saying brain injury navigators. Someone to help the brain injury survivor, their family, their loved ones, figure out this tangled maze of supports and services that without help really become problematic for quite frankly, for anyone, let alone someone with a brain injury. Now, as I mentioned, Senator Knoop, Tim Knoop, he represents an area down and around Bend, Oregon. Has been an active supporter of our efforts on behalf of brain injured individuals, and he has agreed to be the chief sponsor for Legislative Council 3123. We don't yet have a bill number. We are working out some details still with Legislative Council. Expect to have a bill number shortly. Oregon is one of 11 states without a dedicated brain injury resource facilitation program. I find that to be an insult to Oregon. Oregon has been a leader in brain injury legislation, brain injury services and supports in other areas, but not this one. So I'm very excited that Senator Knoop has decided to sponsor this. As we all know, the financial picture for the state of Oregon is very challenging right now. This does have what's called a fiscal impact, and therefore will require accessing money from somewhere to set up this program. Luckily, there is a fund that is already established that is funded by fines from moving violations, especially driving while under the influence violation or misdemeanors, felonies, and the like. There appears to be money available through that fund, but again, I'm not holding my hopes up at too much with this effort this session, except to say that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to educate the legislators on both sides of the House as to why we need it, what it means, how it's going to benefit not only the individual receiving the resource facilitation, but also, as we have demonstrated with an economic study that we did out of Oregon Health Sciences University's healthcare economist department, that shows tremendous financial savings to the state through Medicaid avoidance. We also have some evidence that's being developed right now that shows that there is a significant decrease in recidivism for inmates who receive brain injury resource facilitation. There are some wonderful anecdotal stories coming out of prison populations around the country where they, prior to being identified as brain injured individuals, they were merely treated as behavior problems, people with disinhibition, people who couldn't control their anger, without recognizing that these problems were the result of the brain injury itself. Once that becomes a reality for the inmate, that inmate, quite frankly, derives hope, gets into treatment, understands why they are acting as they are, and then is able, through these wonderful vocational rehab, speech therapists, vision, hearing, neurologists, neuropsychologists, whatever that treatment may be, realizes that there is hope at the end of the tunnel. Now we are able to bring in some national experts for our expected hearing committee testimony, and we're very excited about that. The second bill is one that addresses a problem that we know to be evidence-based. It is identified in the literature, and I have actually direct emails from medical providers, in this particular case, a medical director of a pediatric emergency department in Oregon, where he says, quote, "We may not always document the specific symptoms to suggest concussion," and goes on to say that even though an individual may present with these signs, symptoms, and behaviors consistent with a brain injury, those are not charted on that initial emergency room chart or at urgent care for a number of different reasons. Maybe there's no treatment available at that emergency care facility for those brain injury signs, symptoms, and behaviors. Maybe there are other more acute or understood as more acute medical conditions such as orthopedic problems, lacerations, contusions, whatever, that kind of divert the attention away from the balance issues, the cognitive problems, the headache, the blurry vision, etc. So with this, we are really trying to get the message out to the medical community that it is critically important that those signs, symptoms, and behaviors of consistent with brain injury are documented in that initial chart note. If it is not, it can have a significant ripple effect down the road. Jennifer touched on the troubles that people can have accessing, for instance, SSD, and this is an effort to kind of solve that problem. The third bill listed is House Bill 4140. I have talked about this in previous webinars in detail, so I'm not going to talk too much about it right now, except to say that it is, in my mind, a landmark bill. It will provide immediate temporary accommodations for students who are returning to school after a brain injury that will be applicable to the classroom setting. Very easy to apply. For instance, it's the if-then model. If the student is having trouble with the fluorescent lights, let the student wear a hat. If they need more time on tests, let them have that time. If they're fatigued, give them some time, some opportunity to rest. These accommodations are needed in the short term. As we know, the majority of students who are concussed, suffer mild traumatic brain injury, will recover, but during that recovery period, it can be significantly detrimental to their academic process or progress if they are not given these immediate temporary accommodations. So that's it in a nutshell. We're very excited that these two efforts are moving forward now, and we're really hoping that they do pass, that they get through the process. What you guys can do, if you're so inclined, is to consider contacting Senator Knopp over in Eastern Oregon and expressing support for the resource facilitation bill, and contacting your local legislators and asking them to support them as well. So with that, I will turn it back to Lori, and thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave, for that wonderful overview. Accommodations is certainly running through a through line through all of the presentations today. And thanks for bringing that up with House Bill 4140. And also connecting back to the resource facilitation legislation, we'd like to do right now is to bring Megan back to reintroduce the Services and Supports Needs Assessment Survey that's been introduced in previous webinars, but would like to kind of re-review this with you all today. So Megan, feel free to join me here when you get a sec.
Thank you, Lori. So some of you may have seen this in your email inbox already. It's been circulating around Eastern Oregon and statewide. But if you haven't seen it, everyone who has registered for this webinar series will get this email. So we are looking at seeing the state of the services and supports for brain injury across Oregon. So we have a survey both for providers and people with brain injury. So we'd like to ask you to take this survey. It will take probably less than 30 minutes for you to fill out, and if you can, to forward it on to your networks as well. And if you have any questions about the survey, I'm happy to address those in the Q&A.
All right. Yes, we really appreciate all of you who've filled it out already. We're making a big push to get as much information as we can here in the next week, actually, to send to our statistician, who will then get the information to Dave, who will then take it to the Hill, and working with Senator Knopp and others to advance this legislation. So appreciate your time and attention to this as well. Okay, we are nearing the end of the webinar, but we want to make sure if there are any questions or comments that you have time to express those. Here's the contact information for not only Jennifer and Dave and myself, but all of our other presenters during this webinar series. And then we also have the resources I mentioned earlier. The links are available to you. So at this point, I am going to mention the one at the bottom here, and then let's do a little question and answer. Accommodating brain injury in vulnerable and at-risk populations. If you're really interested in more detail on accommodations, Dr. Clayton Slinovec did this presentation in January. It's excellent work that she's doing, bringing in social determinants of health and how to really comprehensively look at accommodations, and borrows a lot from some of the other resources I mentioned, but I just wanted to call that out. And she has her final webinar in April coming up if you're interested. So with that, Amanda, I think we have a few minutes. If any questions have popped up in the chat or Q&A, maybe all the panelists can be just brought to the surface again. I don't know what the technical term is.
Yeah. Actually, the question I have in chat is for Jennifer.
Excellent.
So this is from Nicole, and she says that she works with both OR and ID patients. I'm assuming Oregon and Idaho. Is that right? Do you have any contact information for Idaho patients, and is there someone on the Idaho side that provides the same support as you do? And Jennifer, I think you're muted. Okay, there we go.
Okay. So the person that you would, well, the program that you would contact is a Social Security funded program. It's called the WIPA, W-I-P-A, Work Incentive Planning Assistance. You can go online and put in the WIPA program, and it will bring up who to contact in Idaho. I believe they're located in Boise. I think there's either one or two people in the state of Idaho. But when you go in and you bring that up, it's going to send you to, I think it's the University of Montana, and they are the grantee for the WIPA program in Idaho. So don't get thrown off by getting sent to the University of Montana's website to get services, WIPA services for Idaho. And if you want the link for that or something, my email is on here. You can send me an email and I can send you that link.
Great, thank you so much. And for any of the rest of you, I'm not seeing any other questions yet in chat, but it would be fantastic if you would put that in there. We'd love to answer any questions that you have. And in the meantime, thank you so much for answering that. University of Montana would be confusing. Thanks for mentioning that, Jennifer.
Jennifer, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Just briefly on Social Security disability benefits. It seems like it's such a common experience for people who apply for SSD to experience denial. Do you have experience with that yourself, being in this position that you're in, and any ideas, advice, words of wisdom that you wish to share about that? If so.
I don't do a lot of eligibility for Social Security. I mean, I do a little bit. I know a lot of the centers for independent living provide some resources to help people with applying for their Social Security benefits. Not all of them do that. The denials, I have just been told, keep appealing it until you're successful, or you don't always need to bring in legal help at the beginning, but if it continues, then to contact legal counsel to get help with that process.
Okay.
And Lori, if I can step in just for a quick second, for those of you who don't know, I was a litigator for 29 years before accepting this position a couple of years ago. And I just want to reiterate what Jennifer just mentioned, and that is that the denial process can be used as more of a strategic process than an actual decision on the merits of the case. And what Lori said, absolutely pursue your appeals. A lot of people drop out after that first denial and do not appeal it further. And then ultimately those who do appeal it get some benefit. I'd also like, Jennifer, I'd like to point out that the PASS plan is wonderful. What a tremendous modification to the SSI, SSD program. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I've had two individuals go for, well, the one I just mentioned, and one other young man that have went for a PASS plan for a self-employment goal, and are moving, and are doing wonderful because of the use of the PASS plan. So, Social Security has a lot of rules, but those rules can be used to your advantage too, and strategically. So just need to get contact with someone that can help you know what those rules are.
Well, we're so grateful to you and for all of the other Jennifers out there doing this work, helping people navigate the system, and to have that kind of confidence and knowledge and hope to bring people along and to support them in their goals. Jennifer, thank you so much. Dave, Megan, and all of you for being here today. Amanda for being our behind the scenes and in front of the scenes coordinator for the webinar technical aspects. We hope to see a lot of you the first Wednesday in March for our next Eastern Oregon Provider Network. Otherwise, please feel free to contact us through email, and just all the best to all of you in what you're doing and in your work and in your lives. Okay, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.